So welcome, everyone. My name is
welcome.
Charlie McDermott. I'm here with my
Barb.
lovely wife, Barb. And we're here to talk about how to turn your body into an ACE,
Your
an
internal environment.
Cancer environment.
Yeah, internal.
And, Barb mentioned this a while back about rather than fighting cancer, which is certainly important, from our point of view, there's an important component that we just go, wow, why is the cancer community
mainstream
missing out or not even talking about this? So
as much as we feel it should be talked about.
Yeah. So it's we're going to talk about starving cancer tonight and in the weeks to come, as you'll soon hear about. So I'm going to start us off, but you were talking about why you're here.
Well, yeah. Again, we don't have cancer directly in our family, but we have a child compromised with an autoimmune disease, and that her situation, like every other person with diabetes type 2 or the autoimmune cousin type 1 knows, these individuals are at a heightened risk for heart disease, cancer, neuropathy, kidney failure, lots of lousy things, right? Not only are they at risk of getting or being diagnosed with these lousies, but they're also at a heightened risk of not winning the battle. Okay? So when you have a child in a compromised situation, I needed to find out everything I could. The interesting thing was, it presented itself to me when I wasn't even necessarily looking for that particular answer. Answers were coming to me like, what? The connection between breast cancer and type 1 diabetes. Yeah. So that's why I'm here. I learned too much not to share. I dropped my glasses. I learned too much not to share what I've learned. And when you see the word starve cancer, don't let that scare you. It doesn't mean we're starving ourselves. We're actually just depriving cancer cells of their primary fuel. It makes it sound as if it's some kind of extreme way of living or eating or, sacrificial, but it's actually not. And we've had shifters naturally defend themselves against cancers or get them through cancers more easily than they would have otherwise. We have a little story about that. Yeah. And just what we call an anti-cancer environment. We want our environment to be healthy for healthy cells and hostile to rogue cancer cells. That's what we're all about.
Yep.
Does that help?
Yep. That does. So let me start by, I'm going to go back to the screen share. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth here. Let me start by introducing Barb here. There we go. And I'm going to make our...
Above and beyond me sitting here waving
bigger.
to you in my blue shirt, right?
There we are. So welcome. Those who are just joining us, we are here to talk about how to turn your body into an ACE, an anti-cancer environment. And this is all about, instead of fighting cancer, although that's extremely important, let's talk about how to starve cancer. And Barb is our teacher.
I'm the teacher today.
And you are a teacher. And for 23 years, this teacher helped me. Well, more so I helped you, I think, most of the time.
It works both ways. Run our health clubs.
We ran a chain of health clubs in the Westchester, Pennsylvania area. And then we transitioned into other stuff. Yeah. And recently you became a best-selling author.
Whoop, whoop.
Yep. Little Brown book. Food BS has helped now hundreds, probably thousands of individuals with all kinds of health conditions, including cancer.
Yeah.
As well as diabetes and fibromyalgia and chronic pain and arthritis and on and on.
Yeah. Simplifying the science.
Yeah. That's a must-read. Those of you, as we go through tonight's program, want to get a feel for what Shift is all about, that's a great start. Go to foodbs.com, and we actually pay for the book for you.
Actually, foodbsbook.com.
Oh, geez, thank you.
Yeah, foodbsbook.com.
That's why I invited Barb.
I'm the detail. foodbsbook.com.
Yep. And as Barb mentioned earlier, she stumbled upon this formula, what we call a Shift formula, in trying to figure out our daughter Erin, who was struggling mightily with type 1 diabetes, diagnosed at age 16, and for 7 long years tried just about everything and then some, and sometimes twice, thinking, well, the first time maybe we missed something.
Yeah, we weren't motivated enough, you know.
And the spectrum from exercise to green drinks to alkaline camps or whatever you call these retreats that we looked at investing $10,000, $20,000 for a week.
Yeah.
And it just
wasn't the answer.
We could talk all night about all the different courses that Barb took and publications and.
But what I learned was that doesn't work, that doesn't work,
Yep.
that doesn't work, that
Yep.
doesn't work, that doesn't work. So in the investigation, we learn what doesn't work, and that's important too, right?
Yep. No one gets it right the first time.
Not often, and if you do get it right the first time, you don't know that you know it's right because you don't have enough failures, right?
So we, I hesitate to use the word figured out, Erin. With type 1 diabetes, as many of you know, there's no cure for that, but certainly figured out in the way that we helped her stabilize her blood sugar, her blood sugar levels, which of course helps in all different aspects.
That's where the food BS, blood sugar, that's what that's about.
Comes into play. Yeah.
And that applies to all of us, not just those with diabetes. Yeah.
And little did we know, as we were helping Erin, we were helping ourselves.
We helped ourselves big time.
We shifted. We didn't know. We weren't calling it shift at the time. And all of a sudden, my allergies that were with me for years and years, I was getting shots and taking medicine. If I missed a day of medicine, I'd have a head cold and a sore throat. And within days, I went,
I forgot
to take my allergy medicine, and I feel fine. And I haven't taken a pill since, and that's going on 5 years now. Haven't been sick, nothing, not a zilch, zero. And we could tell you, again, all different kinds of stories. We're going to share a few as we move on, but the short version is, as folks saw what happened with Erin, weight loss of about 30, 35 pounds, and as I said, blood sugar stabilizing,
Cravings.
Insulin down 75%, cravings gone, eliminated. They started
Energy.
saying, hey, can you help me?
Yeah.
With all kinds of different
I
conditions.
was like, let's give it a try. I was like, oh, that worked. Yeah.
So, anyway, we are here to share that knowledge with you. And by the way, Barb is not a cook.
Not a kitchen girl.
Which is another reason why we love Shift, because...
it can be fancy, or it can be minimalist cooking, or not even cooking at all. I mean, some people get by,
So as you go through this tonight and you're wondering,
have to be a
how
recipe
challenging is this going to be? How much am I going to have to shift my eating and eat crazy foods and all that? Forget it. It is brain dead simple. I mean, it is so darn easy. As I said to Barb, it's easier for me to cook a meal now than it ever was pre-shifting.
So why aren't more people doing it, Char, if it's so easy? Because it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It goes against every magazine that's out on the supermarket checkout. There's some partial truths written in different articles, but it's counter conventional. So that's why everyone's not doing it. Okay. And plus, it makes people healthy and not need oftentimes medicines. So you're not really going to be supported. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay.
So here's the gang. Here's the McDermotts. We have 3 kids. We talked about Erin earlier, and we have our oldest, Charlie, who lives in Los Angeles, along with our youngest, Grace, who is also in Los Angeles, living pretty close to one another. Grace is a photographer, and Charlie is, yes, if he looks familiar, he is an actor. He is on the show The Middle. There we are a few years ago with, that is
lucky moment.
Dick Van Dyke. We just happened to walk on the soundstage when they were filming an episode with Dick Van Dyke and his brother Jerry Van Dyke. So
to get to do a dance number with Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah.
I didn't get to do that, but I imagined I did. It was pretty cool.
And there's Erin, who talks
Recovering
about, that's okay.
Okay.
I think that's just our version. I don't think
Oh,
everyone sees that. But talks about her experience with this new way of eating, and
it just calmed everything. It steadied everything. It took away the bloat. It took away, as we said before, the cravings. I call them food demons, when you absolutely have to go for that sugary something or whatever. That unravels us. Yeah. And when you realize it's chemistry driven, it's not discipline or lack of hustle or a character flaw. No, it's really just not knowing the impact on our foods and that specific impact on our body's ability to burn fat versus store fat, to deprive cancer cells of fuel or supply them with cancer cell fuel, to feed into cravings or to quiet cravings. And all of them, they all match. The very same way of eating that takes us to fat burning rather than fat storage also takes us to depriving cancer cells of fuel, and also takes us to quieting cravings or eliminating them altogether. The wins are stacked, but then the losses are stacked too. And that's generally what most people who are struggling with some kind of chronic metabolic condition, they feel like the cards are stacked against them. Yeah. But once you understand the science, you can literally shift that in your favor. And that's where we're just going to talk about some simple science revolving around that big lousy C word, cancer.
So you ready?
I think everyone's ready.
Yeah, let's do it. So let me
and while he's hitting the slides up here, remember the way I share science is that I do my very best to take complicated situations. Cancer is a complicated science. I am not a doctor, but I'm a mom who just keeps reading and researching and trying things out and sharing, and I see results, right? So what I do is I take the science, I simplify it down to like a middle school, high school level where we all can understand it, because if we can't understand it, we can't act on it. So just understand that what we're going to share today is we want to the best of our ability, to do our part that we are responsible for in creating our internal environment to be anti-cancer, hostile to cancer. That's what this is all about. So when we say don't fight cancer, there's so much fighting. We're behind you for the fight. Well, when I hear the word fight, I think of a war or a battle. And when there's a war or battle going on, I know that one of the first strategies in war is to learn about your foe, your enemy, its strengths or its weaknesses, and both. And one of the first things you do is you starve or you cut off the fuel supply, because nothing can operate when it's not fueled, right? So that's interesting enough. That's where it's amazing how it all comes together. So when we talk about starving cancer, we're not starving our healthy cells. No, we're actually going to be fortifying them with beautiful macronutrient that is fat and ketone bodies, which are these therapeutic energy molecules, a byproduct of metabolizing fat. And guess what? Cancer cells can't access those. So we are not starving ourselves. We're just specifically starving cancer tumorous cells, depriving them as best we can of their primary fuel source. So here we go. So what is cancer? How does cancer even take hold? Again, 5th grade version here. So apoptosis is basically cell suicide, committing suicide. So our healthy cells are designed that when they're corrupted or they're deranged or they get manipulated by like a toxin, an environmental pollutant, an anti-nutrient, we breathe in lousy things, we consume lousy things, even in our lotions there are lousy things, right? So there are environmental pollutants that can come into our body one way or another, and they can corrupt an otherwise healthy cell. So you don't catch cancer from somebody else, right? It develops within us. So one of our healthy cells is corrupted, and guess what happens? The apoptosis, the programmed cell death, gets turned off. So when a healthy cell gets ruined, it should just die. That's a beautifully working system. But for some reason, these cells don't die, and that programmed cell death gets turned off. So now we have an otherwise one-time healthy cell now is corrupted, and it's going to keep growing more of this corruptedness. That's cancer. Okay. Well, in the community of the world, we have looking at cancer as a genetic disease or a metabolic disease. Well, genetically, we can be predisposed or vulnerable to developing cancer. That's why some families, there's a lot of cancer in the family, and some families don't. We're genetically strong and weak in certain areas. So, the pharmaceutical company, oncology company, certainly views it from that genetic disease point of view, and there's definitely truth in that. But remember, that's very expensive. It's toxic. When we're doing chemotherapy, which oftentimes we have to do that, but you see all the fast-growing cells, your hair, well, you lose it, right? And it's trying to chemically kill the cell. Okay, so there's the fighting. Okay, we're looking at it from a different therapeutic lens, but oftentimes it's ineffective, and I'm just sharing what I've read in research. Many out there will say, are individuals dying of cancer or dying of the therapies to fight cancer?
Right.
Okay, or a little bit of both. And I don't have the answer. We're just having conversations. Next slide, please. Okay, so pharmaceutical, that's more the genetic. But then a lot of the research studies of oncology, the study of cancer, believe that it's a metabolic disease, and that goes way back to Warburg. I mean, we're talking like a century ago, okay? And it's well, first of all, it's not expensive. It's non-toxic way of looking or effective therapies against. Metabolic refers to our body's ability to take food and convert it to energy. And how does that play into not so much the cause of cancer, but the supporting of those cell suicide turned off, corruptions growing, metabolically, or can we support that and not support that? And that's really what this is all about. And it's obviously when you change the way you eat, that's a non-toxic way to tip the odds in your favor, right? So what does cancer have to do with blood sugar? That's where you see the word B, the letters BS. Whenever I talk about BS, sometimes I'm talking about belief system, but oftentimes we're talking about blood sugar. Well, the interesting thing, which knocked me off my rocker, but it actually made me understand why my type 1 diabetic would be more prone to developing cancer and not living from it than her brother or sister, is because she has a system that her body doesn't produce insulin, so glucose is mayhem for type 1 diabetic. They learn how to manage it, but it's exhausting. It's 24/7. Well, cancer cells actually depend very highly on the primary fuel of glucose. That's blood sugar. So when we eat food and it's converted to glucose, glucose and blood sugar are the same, they're the very same thing. Okay? And cancer cells also have to rely on a small hormone called insulin. Insulin, basically like a little key, opens up the cells in our body and allows the glucose fuel to get in. Glucose is fuel, and it's a great thing. But in excess, it's not so great. And if it's feeding cancer cells, heck no. Maybe there's something I can do. So sometimes I use this word as a cancer answer. It's not a cure, but is there something that we can do? Okay, we can look at toxic therapy, which is chemotherapy and radiation. And yes, if your doctors are suggesting we need to do that, then we need to do that. But is there something else I can do while that's going on to support that? Yeah. And that's what we call the non-toxic therapy. It's called metabolic therapy. And again, just reinforcing what metabolism means. It's the conversion of food to energy and all the different building blocks that support cell life. Okay, and a perfect example is my friend Betty up at the top. She's a cancer survivor, also a type 2 diabetic. You see the relationship. Many type 2 diabetics are also in a cancer situation because they have an exorbitant amount of glucose, because that system of regulating that is not doing so good. Okay, but she understands how to eat, and she knows that eating all these delicious foods, she's not feeding cancer. She's feeding her healthy cells, enjoying life, not feeding cancer. So when I say an answer to cancer, that's what I mean. Not a cure, but something that we can do proactively and very simply. So when you do something like shift, I should hit the things.
Yeah.
Kind of like going like this. So shifting, what we talk about is we teach people how to eat so that the odds are in their cancer fighting favor. We want to fight cancer. I know it says fighting there, but we're helping to tip the odds. We don't want cancer cells to even take hold. That's what that first one's about. Second one, cancer cell growth. Don't supply them with the fuel as to the best of our ability, right? And our internal environment literally becomes hostile, not friendly to the cancer starting in the first place. Because cancer has a metabolic weakness that we can exploit. It relies on glucose and glutamine. Okay, that's deeper science for another time. But it cannot operate on the byproduct of fat metabolization, which is these ketone bodies that we learn about in shift. So we can actually provide our body with beautiful fuel, ketone bodies, and a lot less of the cancer cell fuel. But here's the good thing. Our cancer cells, that sounded horrible. Horrible cancer cells need about sometimes 30 times, if not more, fuel than a healthy cell. So even shifting out some of that glucose food, which is carbohydrate food, and too much protein can be a problem too. But shifting that out, even little hinges, is going to significantly kind of stall cancer's growth or make it really hard for it to grow. We want to bend it and twist it and choke it, right? And that's what we can do. So talking about cancer cells' weakness on the next slide, the weakness is that we just said this, it relies on high levels of glucose. So every time we eat a high carbohydrate meal, we literally flood our bloodstream with glucose. And what is that doing? Cancer cells nearby, they're loving that.
They are loving life.
They're designed, and we'll talk about it later, they're designed to be able to just suck that glucose up. And they also rely on high levels of insulin. Insulin is produced by our pancreas, directly proportional to our blood sugar rise from the meal we just ate. And glucose and insulin are implicated in cancer. So understanding this science puts you in the driver's seat and gives you that little extra, I shouldn't say little, gives you a huge advantage. So let's look, let me look up here. So here I have my friend Susan, reversing type 2 diabetes. And remember, cancer and diabetes are friendly to one another. Okay, you don't catch one from the other, but they will support one another. And Susan was one of these individuals who had diabetes forever as an adult. So, when you have a chronic disease, it gets worse and worse and worse unless you know how to effectively and strategically put some actions into place that are going to slow that down. And cancer is also a chronic disease that can get worse and worse and worse until you know the rules and know how to play them in your favor and not damn cancer's favor. But my friend Susan here, with her basically, we have a report card I call when you're diabetic. You can be very diabetic, which is, really lousy. Blood sugar is really high out the roof and not managed very well. And then that number can come down, that value can come down. We talk about that in our shift program more explicitly. But she was able to get her nightmare to come way down, so much so that if you ever heard of an individual as a diabetes consequence, like neuropathy or kidney failure, or having an open wound on your body that just won't heal. Now, our friend Susan, she had been dealing with this for almost 2 years. Yep. And her doctors had said, there's nothing more we can do. She was doing treatment after treatment, going to a wound clinic. Can you imagine the expense, the time, the frustration? Within 5 months of shifting, that wound is closed. And her A1C, which is her diabetes report card, has dropped. And dropped is a good thing, is amazing. Along with the weight, along with cravings, and energy, the opposite, going up. So again, the interesting thing about cancer, diabetes, fibromyalgia, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, we can go on. These are all metabolically driven, and they're all cousins or friendly toward one another, I should say, because they all have glucose and insulin as part of their equation. And that's the science that we teach, trying to take the complexities and the compartments. I'm on the cancer team, I'm on the fibromyalgia team, I'm on the diabetes team. They're all from the same nucleus. They just shoot out. What is each person's weakness? That's how it's going to manifest. But we need to understand this from a human point of view. Okay, next thing. So here's the science stuff that I had come across. And this is directly from one of the science research papers that I had read. It said growing breast cancer cells in the lab has been a revelation for this scientist. I'm not going to try and pronounce it.
Vuk
Stambulik. The protocol that he follows is decades. That's tens old, widely used. The recipe calls, now this is for growing a breast cancer cell in a petri dish, a large dose of glucose, carbohydrate, blood sugar, and a growth factor hormone, which is IGF, we'll get to that later, and there's that word again, insulin. Where there's insulin, there's growth factor hormone gets involved, okay? So, and I probably can add in here too, insulin is a hormone. Growth factor is a hormone. The hormones stimulate or allow for things to happen. It's not fuel, it stimulates. And we just talked to a woman today with breast cancer and said she believed that estrogen was fueling her cancer cells. I would suggest that estrogen is stimulating the growth of the breast cancer cells, but glucose is fueling it. It's a little bit different. Hormones definitely play a part. They're a variable that are definitely involved in different types of cancer. However, it is the glucose underneath it all that is fueling it. So if her doctor is giving her a pill to lower her to lower her estrogen so that she doesn't keep growing breast tissue in a fight against breast cancer, she could also strategically shift her eating and deprive those damn breast cancer cells of glucose. Okay, so that's kind of where this all sits. So continue on with this science research paper, he says, and add these: glucose, blood sugar, growth factor hormone, that's called IGF, and insulin hormone to tissue culture, and tumor cells will be fruitful and multiply. Not my words. I got these out of a research paper that continues to say that a curious thing happens if you try to wean the tumor cells off insulin, however. They, quote, drop off and die. That same scientist, this is what he was saying, cancer researcher at the University of Toronto in Canada, they're addicted to insulin. So doesn't that tell us, if I know that my enemy is addicted to something, aren't I sure as heck going to pull that out of its existence? The only way to get insulin out of your existence is to get glucose levels down. Let's connect the dots. Okay, and if you want to jot that down, you can look that article up. It's a great article. And this is what we need to do. If we are in a situation, our loved one's in a situation, our child is in a situation, we do have to listen to the experts when we go into the medical communities. Absolutely. But we also have to roll up our sleeves and start looking for some answers ourselves. Some of them might be rabbit holes. Some of them might, be far-fetched ideas like just drink green drinks, just do this, just eat organic. And while they all might have a bit of a solution, they're not the whole solution, but it's up to us to go looking. So we talked about insulin levels. We don't want elevated insulin levels, do we? Because that's what they're addicted to. We want lower. So turn to the next position. So elevated insulin levels are going to set the stage for what? Other hormones, like that IGF, well, it's down there. Other hormones are going to enhance those metabolic conditions. It makes cancer advancement so easy. Like one down here, the IGF, insulin-like growth factor. So when insulin's involved, you have to understand that insulin's a growth hormone. It's actually not just our blood sugar regulating hormone, insulin, it's also a fat storage hormone. So if we have fat, especially around our bellies, thank you, insulin. Insulin took your blood sugar and turned it into belly fat for you, okay? But something like IGF, which when insulin is present, this IGF, it's what helps kids grow, okay? Kids eat meals, they have glucose, that's great. Insulin comes in, glucose goes into the cell, yes. And then they have to grow, right? Their muscles have to grow, their bones have to grow, so an insulin-like growth factor helps them to grow. This is why kids who are diagnosed with type 1, like when they're 12 years old or like that puberty spurt, they don't have insulin because their body stopped producing it. So therefore, the insulin-like growth factor is not stimulated either. So they look tiny and little and not growing. It's because they're not. But the opposite of that, high levels of insulin, guess what? We're going to be growing. And as adults, do we want to keep growing? No, we want to level out. And if we have cancer cells lurking below the surface, do we want them growing? No, but that's exactly what will happen when insulin levels are high. And here's another one of our shifters here, another type 2 diabetic again. The report card was like up at a 9. We got him all the way down to a low 6, an A1C. But the best thing was he couldn't even walk. He was so bloated. Insulin levels are elevated, our body will retain water. Okay, as soon as you get those insulin levels down, the bloat comes off of our body. And that's the first thing he felt, 60 pounds lighter. Insulin doses, those of us having to actually dose insulin, better heck know what we're doing. Lethal substance. You need it to stay alive, but it can also kill you, okay? And you want to use the least amount of insulin possible to maintain a steady blood sugar. It's not about just dropping insulin. Drop insulin in a way that you can also maintain. So you have to shift your eating. There's no way out of the game, guys. There's no way out of the game. But he's, not only 60 pounds lighter, but his insulin dose, it makes me sick to to see, he was dosing that many units a day, and most days...
87, in case you can't read it.
Yeah, 87 units a day. And he's gotten it down to most times a 0. He still has to use insulin, but way, way less. Okay?
Yeah.
So someone like this individual...
The other part of that is he was growing, not only physically, but the insulin. He was going from 50 units a day to 60 to 70. And this is over the course of years. And
diabetes is accelerated aging, everybody.
Yeah.
If you want to see blood sugar in excess accelerates our aging in every way, in every disease, in every situation. Understand blood sugar, bring it down, not just steady your blood sugar, bring it down. Understand the foods that impact it. Insulin comes down too, and we resolve our crises. Yeah. So again, another piece of science, research to kind of put up on the screen here. It seems that cancer, his words, loves the metabolic environment of the obese person. So anyone who's carrying any extra weight, and the word obesity, it can sound so offensive, but it doesn't mean really that much overweight. It's not that extreme of an overweight.
Right.
But most obese people have been following the protocol of how to eat healthy. They've exercised, watched what they ate.
Yep, we saw in our health clubs.
Yes, right? So this is why cancer and diabetes are close friends, because a diabetic body produces the perfect environment. Now, interesting thing is, you don't have to be labeled or diagnosed diabetic to be a diabetic environment, because your insulin might do the job of bringing the blood sugar down, but guess where the blood sugar is going? Around your belly as fat. So there you can be in a diabetic situation without being labeled diabetic, because your blood sugar, it comes down, but where did the blood sugar go? You're probably carrying it, okay? So studies show that not only is type 2 diabetes associated with increased cancer incidence, but mortality, meaning people with type 2 diabetes die of cancer way more than those of us who don't. I'm sure you can think of someone you know who has had type 2 diabetes or apple-shaped body and succumbed to, cancer. So circulating levels of insulin and IGF factor are directly involved in your ability to beat cancer or lose to cancer. Levels are high, you're not going to win. Get those levels down, odds in your favor. Yeah. Okay, and that's an oncologist from McGill University, Michael Polak. Okay. So just talking about obesity, we just did a few seconds ago. It's our waist circumference, meaning belly fat. Visceral means the trunk. So when we have elevated circulating insulin, that's because our glucose was high, because our carbohydrate intake was high. Hyperinsulinemia is when we have lots of insulin circulating. So you could be non-diabetic, but be hyperinsulinemia. You have so much insulin doing the job to get the blood sugar down. Doctors checking your blood sugar. Oh, you're not too high. You're pre-diabetic. You're not that diabetic. I've heard all these things being said. But my question is, I ask, but how much insulin did it take to get that blood sugar down? And insulin stokes insulin growth factor, yada, yada, yada. Insulin's there. Cancer cells have access to glucose. It's just how it works. So again, just very simply, I get into this deeper inside our program, but foods, converted glucose, bloodstream, blood sugar. Insulin gets the blood sugar out and into the cells. Oftentimes our cells don't need any more, because we're not running around all day like the kids on the playground, are we? So when we have excess blood sugar, our body converts it to fat, primarily to our belly. We carry it around our belly. So when I first coach individuals, I'll say, I call this our insulin belt. Just put your hands around your waist and you'll know how prevalent insulin is in our life. Just a little reference. Again, it's about awareness. But the cool thing is, the solution to obesity is this beautiful science state, metabolic state called ketosis. We are in ketosis when we are in a beautiful state of fat burning, using what we have around our middle to fuel our day. That's ketosis. This is what we teach our shifters to do. When can it occur? It can only occur occur when insulin levels are low. Why is that? Because insulin is going to lock your fat stores down because it needs to get rid of that blood sugar. I'm not burning fat until the blood sugar is taken care of. And we learn that all we need to do is reduce our carbohydrate intake, allow some more fat into our diet. It's delicious, okay? Insulin comes down, and that simple food proportioning allows us to enter ketosis very naturally throughout the day, okay? So the beautiful thing is we absolutely know with absolute certainty the impact of our food choices on our body's ability to burn fat rather than store fat. Shouldn't we all know that? I want to teach this to middle schoolers and young high school kids. They're the next generation who need to know this. Knowing that what I'm eating is going to allow my body to be burning fat rather than storing fat. And that's what we teach here. And that goes into the cancer connection. So ketosis and the cancer connection is the metabolic therapy that these research scientists and forward-thinking doctors are talking about is ketogenic therapy. Okay, ketogenic means getting our body in ketosis often. It controls eating ketogenically, meaning just less carbohydrate, more fat back in our lives. It controls that level of blood sugar. It controls our glucose and insulin. So it severely compromises cancer cells. Severely. Not our healthy cells, because they can rely on the ketones that are the byproduct of eating this way. It's fat. Our healthy cells can run on fat. Our brains can run on fat. Okay? But the cancer cells can't. So those of us who have shifted are experiencing energy we thought was only for when we were young or 21 or 18. And our friend Priscilla from up in Canada, oh my gosh, she dropped her cravings. She got the energy. She's 73 years old. And I wish you could see the picture of when we first met her. Because when she sent a picture showing how well she's done, we're like, wait, that's Priscilla?
Oh, she came to our seminar.
Utah, yeah.
And then a few months later, she stopped by the house. Actually, it was just a few weeks ago.
Right.
And I didn't know who it was.
That's right.
It wasn't until she left, I said, and I saw her name on the letter. I said, oh my goodness, that was Priscilla.
And interestingly, like many sugar burners out there, she had to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Because you're hungry, because you're craving, because you're in sugar burning mode, which means your body's going to be demanding glucose. And hey, if you're in a cancer situation, you might be craving sweets and carbohydrates because you have a tumorous growth in your body that's demanding it be fed. And we need to understand kind of like these monsters inside of us, okay? So this woman lost 23 pounds, her cravings, and got her energy back. And her blood work is beautiful. Yeah. Because we overburden our bodies with glucose, and we don't even need that much. And we get into exactly how much we need in our shift program. It's staggering. And it makes you understand, shika. I understand why I'm compromised. I have been overburdening. We were overburdening our daughter. She's damn flipping type 1 diabetes. And the doctors are saying, have this much carbohydrate every meal. And you're like, you thought you had to do it. And then you realized, we don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And how it all works. So that's where the cancer connects to ketogenic, which connects to ketosis, which solves obesity, which also... And you don't have to be obese to have cancer. Our bodies can handle glucose many different ways. Storing as fat is just one of them. Okay?
Yep. Now, I know we have a lot more to cover. We've covered a lot, and I've already heard from a few before we even started tonight that, oh my goodness, Charlie, I have to leave early. Can I get a recording? You know, what can we do here? And the short version is, and I'll get into more in depth on the program at the end for those of you who want to hang in there, but we have decided that it is so important to get this information out there.
I'd want to know it.
And Barb can't do it, quite frankly, in one night. It's too much. It's not a good learning environment for you because it's just too much to take in.
Yeah.
So what we've decided to do is to give everyone who is a member access to this course. First we started out looking at charging $197 for this information, and then we kept whittling it down, and we finally said, you know what, let's just include it in our membership. Now, we also have probably about half our attendees who are not members.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We're going to give you 30 days membership in the program. Once you're a member, when we offer this cancer alternative, you'll get access to it.
Yeah.
All right. And this will be a multi-module program where Barb will cover everything. All right. Nuts and bolts of how to truly make your body an ace.
Tip the odds in our favor, right? Listen to your doctor's directives, follow the protocols, but then something on your end,
Yep.
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 And we're going to end it right here, aren't we?
No.
Are we going to keep going?
No, we got lots more.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure
no.
if everyone's tired out there.
So, and
the way
then
you said that,
the
I
next
thought we were
question is, well, what happens after 30 days? And the answer is, you can stay, you can go.
We don't hold
help you
anyone.
stay. It's a month-to-month thing, and it's $9 a month. So your membership continues $9 a month.
Just
you
that
get
support,
access, and we'll get into the details
community.
later. But the thinking is, hey, get in there, get a feel for what it's all about, get access to this important information, and then you decide from there. Okay. I'm going to just check on how we're doing with. I don't even know how to find where are our. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. No, we're good. All right. So back to our regularly scheduled program here.
And again, we're speaking about the big. Cancer is a very complex, and I speak very sensitively about it. And there are lots of ideas out there of how to tip the odds in our favor. And basically, we're just going to kind of just look through these and just kind of get a feel for them. Because we're not saying these are good nor bad or right or wrong. They're just other tools, okay? The interesting thing, though, is if you apply the science of ketosis and ketogenic therapy with these, it's explosively powerful. Yeah. Okay, so we've heard about alkalinizing. My body's so acidic, I need to alkaline, so I need alkaline foods. There's the idea of not eating any foods, hard foods, but just juicing. So we're getting very nutrient dense, a glass full of nutrients, right? Then, of course, there's a whole concept of vegetarian or plant-based therapy, that somehow meat is your enemy and is going to foil your efforts at surviving cancer. There's the whole concept of making sure we consume enough antioxidants to build our fortress, our arsenal, exercising our way out of cancer, and addressing stress. Certainly, all of these protocols would or could have benefits. Remember, we are all individuals, and we all view life through our own lens. But let's take a look at each one of these things and see how they kind of unravel. So the concept of acidity and alkalinity, we've always heard, or at least I know I have heard, that I once believed that if I had an acidic environment, I was going to be allowing cancer to develop in me, okay? But then I went a little deeper and I'm like, what? Because we had done this with our daughter. We thought if we can get her so alkaline, somehow her autoimmune triggers would, diffuse and her pancreas would start working again. And then I stumble upon cancer's involvement in this. But many are saying that the acidity associated with cancer is actually caused by the cancer. It's a downstream consequence, not an upstream. It didn't start it. It was created by it. Again, cancer cells' metabolic dysfunction is that it can only primarily fuel on glucose, and sugar is acidic. Therefore, we're creating more acidic body. So it's not necessarily the kinds of foods that we're eating, because inside our body, there's different parts of our bodies are acidic and different parts are alkaline, and your body will adjust accordingly. Okay, but we have to be careful about the notion of we're creating our situation. Okay, and that's from Ellen Davis, and she has a beautiful book about fighting cancer with a ketogenic diet. So one of the things she has said in there is a ketogenic diet, way of eating, is much more powerful effect on overriding that metabolic dysfunction of cancer than eating more alkaline foods ever could. So if you're just eating cucumbers and greens in an effort to become more alkaline, you could actually be eating eggs and butter and creams and, yes, meat if you're a meat eater, and have a more powerful effect on challenging cancer's life than just trying to eat cucumbers. Okay? And by metabolic dysfunction, again, we're talking about its need for glucose. We can eat foods that don't provide our body with glucose. Interesting enough, what you're looking at in front of you actually is glucose. When we think of carbohydrate, most of us think of foods in packages or bakery goods, but our leafy greens are also carbohydrates. Now, in the ketogenic diet, you're eating those greens, okay? But you're not just eating those greens, you're eating other things too. So the next one, please. Alkaline diets then. Is it really successful? Well, it's not in the alkalinity, but rather that they are so low in calories that they induce ketosis without them even realizing. So if an individual is only eating cucumbers and they think that their cancer was solved because they just ate cucumbers, it wasn't the cucumber that solved the cancer. It's the fact that they didn't eat all the other high glucose foods that would have fed the cancer. So they were actually inadvertently, unknowingly starving cancer. Okay? Low in calories is also equivalent with low in glucose. Okay? And then let's look at the idea of juicing. I know we did this too. We tried to create the most powerful smoothie from bananas and fruits and apples and then your kale and powders and pills, right, and potions. And we thought we could nutrition our way out of a problem. Is there enough of a certain kind of nutrient or a mixture of a bunch of nutrients that's going to be the magic cure for our cancer? Well, oftentimes when we're putting that kind of a drink or beverage together in the quest for all these nutrients, what we don't realize is we're putting in nothing but glucose. Concentrated amounts of glucose that actually can feed cancer cells. That doesn't mean you're not able to juice. You could still juice, but you would understand what might be a better ingredient, like the banana that's real high in glucose, fructose. And also your oranges and your grapes too. Celery. So the celery, the kale, and the lime are a good idea. But just, unfortunately, magazines and newspapers don't get into the detail of it. They just use the word, I'm juicing. But as one of our shifters just told me this morning, I did look at the back of the juice, the green juices in the supermarket. It's all carbohydrate. I know, it's all carbohydrate. Yeah. So then we look at the concept of plants only, a plant-based diet or a plants-only diet, which restricts animal fats and proteins. If you think about an egg, it's quite possibly or literally the world's most perfect food because it's an embryo that creates life. It has the beautiful proportion of fat and protein and only a hairline, less than 1 gram of carbohydrate in there. It's interesting. And unfortunately, if you're eating only plants, it's more challenging because you're going to make up those other calories in carbohydrates. Oftentimes, we end up having more grain in our diet and more high starchy vegetables in our diet, which can be cancer cell fuel because they're carbohydrate, they're glucose. Remember that carbohydrate is the macronutrients. There's only 3 macronutrients: fat, protein, carbohydrate. It's the carbohydrate that increases blood glucose because it is glucose, breaks down to glucose. But it doesn't mean we don't eat carbohydrate. We just know how to eat it, so we track it through our day and not stack it. And we understand which carbohydrate is going to work for us, not against us. Okay? But if you look at each of these foods on this picture, butter does not contribute to blood glucose. It's not going to fuel cancer. That steak, some of the protein might if it's more protein than your body needs, but generally it's not. In fact, chicken has more protein in it than beef. Most people try to eat lean chicken breast and don't realize they might be over-proteining themselves. And And of course the egg on the left with some kale, and the tomato behind it is a fruit. That's a little bit, but that's not going to raise your blood sugar that much. So we understand specifically, again, food's ability to feed cancer versus deprive them of their necessary fuel source. Okay? And then we talk about oxidative stress. So oxygen is a very reactive element, okay? So oxygen derived and chemically reactive molecules are what we call free radicals. So when every time we're breathing in oxygen, we create free radicals. But our body, our cells have built-in ability to withstand that. Unfortunately, the more sugary we eat, the more sugar our diet is, the more of a sugar burner we are, that creates a lot of oxidative stress. That's kind of good because even cancer cells can succumb to oxidative stress. But what are those free radicals doing? Why are those so deadly? Well, because they're missing an electron, they ricochet all over the place. They're trying to steal an electron from somebody. They're very destructive. It causes a chain reaction of negative chemical like derangement or corruption. And that results in widespread cell damage. We do not want an overabundance of oxidative stress. But this is exactly what our medical community will use to help rid ourselves of cancer cells. So radiation therapy is designed to overwhelm cancer cells with free radicals.
Wow.
Okay? So then cancer cells succumb to that, and they hopefully die off if they're small enough and weak enough, which is interesting because one of our shifters got right to this. Mm-hmm. She was able to cut past. She had breast cancer, was shifting during it all, and in the time that they were waiting to start her, what do they call it? Her therapy treatment. I hate even using the word treatment. It makes me crazy. But her cancer cells had shrunk enough that she skipped over chemotherapy, went right to radiation. Mm. And let me go here again. So radiation therapy, cancer cells succumb to free radical bombardment. However, what can happen? Well, glucose, if we're eating it that way, it fuels and fortifies the cancer cell's resilience, so radiation's effectiveness gets downgraded. So what happened to one of our shifters? She wasn't fueling with glucose. She was fueling with ketones and fat more than glucose. So what was her effectiveness rating with radiation? Way up. Because she was doing two things, bombarding with radiation and keeping those cancer cells starved. Okay? Keeping them unfueled, keeping them weak. Keeping them weak, right? Okay, let's go to antioxidant arsenal. The idea that we can maybe fortify, the concept is, I've heard this, we can fortify our immune system so strongly that cancer can't win, right? So the conventional viewpoint is that vegetables and fruit and supplements, if you eat more fruits and vegetables, you'll hear this. They're not the same category. Fruits and vegetables are different. They're both carbohydrates, but they're very different from one another. Vegetables are nutrient dense with less glucose. Fruits aren't as nutrient dense as we think. And they have a lot of blood sugar. Okay, fructose to glucose, okay? Or taking supplements in large amounts, to suppress cancer's ability to survive, right? But if you read these scientific research papers, they say that, the cancer cells can use the oxidants too, the antioxidants also, to fight off. So are we actually fortifying us, or are we also fortifying the enemy? Okay? So the idea here is just deprive them of their fuel, right? Okay, so let's look at exercise in cancer, which I call the cycle of insanity as a sugar burner. But interesting enough, when we're exercising like these people, running marathons, doing the treadmill for an hour, pushing ourselves, kind of extreme exercise, if our muscles are overtaxed, and we know what that feels like, it builds up that lactic acid. Well, isn't this interesting that lactic acid can be recycled into glucose? How scary is that? So I'm exercising and supporting cancer cells, right? And again, if we have a cancerous situation, it's going to demand glucose. Yeah. So what can we do? Can we exercise? Well, yeah, there is a way to exercise, and our shifters already know this. To challenge cancer cells, we just need to exercise easier. It doesn't mean you just can go for a walk, but depending upon your fitness level, just don't push it, okay? Gentle walking is a beautiful thing after meal. Why? Because it sweeps glucose from our bloodstream into our cells to be used for energy and will deprive tumor tissue because your cells are going to demand it for movement, okay? And muscle work, stimulated muscles actually reduce our pancreas's need to put out too much insulin. But what I'm trying to say is the stronger your muscles are, the more insulin sensitive they are. So therefore, insulin requirement is less. So it's a beautiful way of lessening, again, that insulin that's so necessary to cancer cell growth. Again, see, all these things stack in our favor, right? And that's why it's complicated, and it's difficult to, in the scope of what we're talking about now, to really address it, okay? And let's talk about stress, because that was one of the last things we were there. And this is, stress can be cancer supporting. Let's look at why. Well, stress drives another hormone we've all heard. Cortisol is a hormone. That's our fight or flight hormone. When we're stressed, we feel like we either need to fight somebody or run away. Whew, we know that one, don't we? And when we have long-term chronic stress, that cortisol is always present. And the interesting thing is that when we're in that fight or flight, look at this. Cortisol is going to trigger glucagon, another hormone, to convert. It's going to tell the liver to convert the stored glucose, glycogen, back into glucose and put it right back into the bloodstream. Because think about it. If you're scared or upset, what happens? I need to run. So your body has pathways in place that will make sure glucose gets back into your bloodstream. And cortisol indirectly triggers more insulin because now your bloodstream has more glucose in it. So now we have more glucose and insulin situation again to feed cancer cells. That's why I think it's so important that everyone understands how cancer cells work.
Yeah.
And again, this is my 5th grade version of it, but at least it gives us a heightened awareness of it all. Yeah. So what we see next is that cancer cells use large amounts of glucose to help protect themselves, as we said, from that oxidative stress. And when blood glucose levels are low, that protective mechanism gets broken, or it's just impaired. It doesn't work as well. Now, there's a domino effect of shifting to a ketogenic way of eating it, and I'll get into these more inside our real program. It's beyond the scope right now because we're already almost at an hour, and there's a threshold for learning, right? But let's think about this. You already have learned this. Shifting the way we're eating, it actually lowers our blood sugar, so it reduces insulin, 2 wins, which inhibits that insulin growth factor we talked about. Now, when we have a low insulin and therefore low insulin growth factor hormone, believe it or not, that lessens another hormonal driver of cancer. It's called TAF, tumor angiogenesis factor. What the heck is that? Tumor angiogenesis factor. So that will also be lowered. So what is that? Next one. What that is, the TAF, tumor angiogenesis factor, that's what helps cancer cells secrete. It's what cancer cells actually secrete, and it builds their own blood vessel supply network. Doesn't that sound like something from a horror movie, an alien? So if blood sugar is reduced and insulin is naturally reduced because of blood sugar, IGF is going to be lowered, and that's going to lower the cancer cell's ability to secrete that TAF. So it's not going to be able to develop its own supporting network of blood vessels. So you see why this tips our odds in our favor? So next thing we think about is that low glucose and minimal blood vessel support network leaves that cancer cell unable to hold up against that free radical damage. It's just not getting enough fuel. It's not getting enough glucose. We do not want to support not only its fuel, but its mechanism or its to support it, right? Yeah. So, what is next? Oh, we had one more on there, didn't we? I couldn't see it.
Oh no. Yeah, it was being hidden here.
It was being hidden again. So when we shift our diet, I'm sorry, everybody. Long day. So when we shift our diet from relying on glucose to relying more on fat in our diet again, breakdown of fat for energy produces what are called ketones. Basically, ketones actually supports the gene expression that helps cells turn that apoptosis on. Remember what was that apoptosis? Remember the very first slide? The very first slide was about what? I can hear you saying it. Cell suicide, right? The ability for a cell, when it goes rogue or becomes deranged, to die should be naturally in place. But if we're in a high glucose situation, which our body is not designed to be in, that's not going to be working. If we're in a low glucose situation with high ketones, that's going to be working.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, that was awesome.
Good.
I mean, I've been hanging around you for 30 years and the last 7.
He doesn't know what I know.
And I continue to be like totally awed by how you connect the dots here. And
8th grade science teacher. I know there's teachers out there listening. It's what we do. We can't help ourselves. If our students don't understand the concepts, they cannot apply them.
Yep.
And this is all about simplifying the concepts. We're not talking on doctor's terms, medical terms. We're not hospital level here. We're talking you and I conversational. So we can actually connect the dots and take action and motivate ourselves. Because when we see it, it's like when you see if you see something in your mind, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can't see it. There's no motivation. Thank you. That was very nice of you.
Yeah. So a lot of you are probably asking at this point, all right, wow, that was a lot. And I know you walked away with some great nuggets of information, and you could begin making changes right away.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no doubt.
Any less carbohydrate is a win. But
when it comes to something like cancer, it's
more fun.
Well,
it's easier.
My goodness, you don't want to just go halfway. And that's when we talked about developing this program where Barb, as I mentioned earlier, really gives you the nuts and bolts.
And there's more to it. There's more to it.
Yeah. So the what next is helping you truly understand how to become an ACE, an anti-cancer environment. And we have made it as easy as possible to get this information not only in your hands, but we ask you to share it with friends, family. I mean, get the word out there. Get them to shiftin30days.com so they can get 30 days free of Shift membership, get access to this very important program, and then decide if they want to stay. It's just $9 a month, as I mentioned earlier. So to get access to this program, go to shiftin30days.com. You'll fill out the form. The moment you click the go button, you will get access to the 21-step program, which is what the cancer alternative is built on.
It's
so
the
it's important that you begin that 21-day program right away, because when Barb begins the cancer alternative program, you're going to learn a lot faster if you already have that foundational course.
It's all based on that foundation.
Okay.
It's like pre-algebra. You got to get it done before you can go to algebra.
All right.
Okay.
So shiftin30, that's the number 30days.com. The URL is right on the page. If you have any problems whatsoever or have questions, call us at our 800 number, 888-477-4300. And if you're wondering, all right, well, what is this Shift membership all about? As I mentioned, it's 30 days free. Then it's just $9 a month. You can cancel anytime. You can cancel on day 29 and 23 hours and 59 minutes, and you won't be charged. We're not here really. We want people involved who need the help, whether it's fighting cancer or pain or type 1 or type 2 and on and on and on. So it's a very, very comprehensive program.
But simplified. Sorry.
Well, as you know, the way Barb simplified it tonight for you. So the membership includes everything. Meal plans, as you can see, every week there's a new meal plan. So if you're into that type of thing, you want someone just to tell you what to eat, it's there. Most of our members use it as a guide.
Yes.
All right. Doesn't mean you have to eat everything on a meal
plan,
and we go into that.
Yep. We like suggestions, but this is, you will know what to eat. You will know.
You get crazy, easy, no hassle recipes. Again, you don't have to use any of these recipes.
And
We
launch off them.
have members who've never touched a meal plan or a recipe.
Yep.
They just know what to do because it's so darn easy, as
Comes
you'll find
intuitive,
out.
yeah.
But if you're really into doing some different things, I know the shift pizza is awesome.
Yeah.
That's like our Friday night
Like
thing.
some of those big game changers, you know,
Yep.
we've troubleshot them, and we have, and
Yep.
it's interesting because some of our shifters have shared their recipes.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's a nice community. It's been great.
There's also additional resources that you get access to. We have this is really important, every Monday at 7 o'clock in the evening. That's East Coast time. If you're in various parts of the country or the world, keep that in mind. We do record them, so if you can't make it for whatever reason, you can always go back and watch the recordings. But Barb does a live coaching session. And this, you know, as we talk to members, certainly the 21-step program is the number one reason for being involved.
Yes. Yes.
But a close second is the ongoing support from Barb.
Yeah.
You know, she's there to answer questions, to tweak
Yeah.
shifts, and to provide support and hear successes and work with those who are having challenges, or you know, and everything in between. So that's something you'll have access to. We have a private Facebook community where you can get support 24/7, ask questions. Our 21-day program. So I mentioned that earlier. This is the foundational piece. The moment you become a shift member, that won't cost you anything for the first 30 days. You will get step number one. You'll get day number one. You'll get 21 days of the program. Each day a video arrives, and it's sequential. So one builds upon the other, upon the other, upon the other. They're very entertaining, enlightening, and they're short and sweet. So you don't have to spend the whole morning watching a video.
Broken down.
Yep. They're in bite-sized nuggets that you can take and learn from and make changes. And you had a digger. Debbie
Yeah.
Conway on our Facebook live show. She just joined Shift last week, and she said, already the bloat's gone. I'm losing weight. I feel
Energy's up.
energized.
Yes.
You know, so you'll begin to feel
That's
all
the
that.
beautiful thing. You will
Yep.
feel it very, very quickly, and then you're in. You're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I'm going to keep going. And that's what happens.
But of course, when we're talking becoming an ACE, it's all about, you know, the main goal. Right? Forget about weight loss, right? We want to we want to create that hostile environment for cancer. And then, if I lose a few pounds in the meantime.
But it's more
get
about
rid of
the
fat.
energy and the
Yep.
clarity and the loss of the cravings.
Yeah.
You know, and all those mean that you are not feeding cancer cells,
Yep.
right? Because weight loss, you're not feeding cancer cells. Okay.
So again, shiftin30days.com. It's real easy. Click the button, fill the form out, click submit. You'll get the email. You'll get the invitation to the Facebook page. You'll get the invitation to our Monday night calls. And here's a couple stories here. These are mom and two daughters that shifted. So I know a number of you folks are watching today with husband and wife. I know a husband and wife team watching this. I know there are others who have kids, and they want the shift benefits to kind of flow down, what you call the ripple effect. And here's a perfect example of the ripple effect.
One started, it moved to another, and then before you know it, they're all involved. So, and again, we have cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, and diabetes represented here, not to mention just other kinds of arthritic pain, just lackluster energy, food cravings, all the things that are typical with menopause or middle age or as we get older. And all three of them are solving their quite specific chronic condition with the same formula. And that's a beautiful thing. And everyone gets impacted positively, you know. And it can go the gamut of young people all the way through to 90 years old.
Yeah, we've even had athletes as teenagers, and we've seen dramatic improvements in things like their race times. So when you optimize your body, which really is what shift is all about, whether you're 15 or 55 or 85, you're going to benefit from it. There's Donna, who has now lost over 40 pounds, and but the cool part about Donna, again, we talked about the ripple effect. Her husband has he's down to a weight that he hasn't been down to since college.
Yeah, and that's been a common thread with our guys.
Yeah. And Donna had fibromyalgia, suffered for 10 long years, could barely get out of bed during the winter months. In 2 weeks, she let us know, hey, my fibromyalgia symptoms are almost non-existent. And then recently in one of the coaching calls, a few months later, she says, get rid of almost, or non-existent. They're gone. Fibromyalgia is gone. And oh, by the way, I'm now down 40 pounds. I mean, her before and after photos are amazing. Yeah. And then we talked about Susan earlier who's, when we first got involved with Susan, she was not mobile. She was in a chair. I mean, she wanted to go shopping. She had to be in one of those carts. Forget about cutting the grass. And now she's telling, as you can see there, telling her son, hey, forget it. Don't come over and cut, or don't tell Isaac to come over and cut the grass. I want to do it, which is pretty
living
cool.
again.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we want you to be involved in this, obviously, in SHIFT, and certainly we can help you on the cancer side. We're excited to bring this program out there to launch it, and we're making it as easy as we possibly can for you to be involved. So go to shiftin30days.com.
We're here for you.
And sign up for that, and we will get you involved in the program. Let me just check.
We appreciate you being here this evening and hanging through to the end.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. And when you're going through something scary like cancer, I know myself when our daughter was diagnosed with her situation, there's no pause button in life. No one jumps in and takes the reins for you, unless you're a child and your parents do, right? Who's going to roll up their sleeves and do the research? So just to me, I was devouring anything I could get my hands on. I didn't care whether, again, it led me to a dead end or whatever. It just was information, And so that's at least what I hope we've been able to do for you this evening. Just give a little more knowledge, again, at a level where we can have a conversation about it and actually be able to visualize it, Science can be complicated.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will end it there.
Yeah.
And I'm just... bear with me 1 second. I'm looking for my windows here. That's what I wanted to find. All right. Awesome.
Some good comments, but no questions right now, so we're good.
And what I was going to say is those of you, if we missed the comments, when you come Monday night, we'll answer all the questions then. You can send us your questions via email at support@theshiftformula.com, and we will answer them on our Monday night calls. And again, if you can't make the Monday night calls, that's okay. We answer them, and then you can just watch the video, the recording. All right?
We're here for you.
Thanks for attending. We'll see you guys soon inside. Take care.